My name's Eugene Rogan, and I am Professor of Modern Middle Eastern History at the University of Oxford, and I'm Director of the Middle East Centre in St. Antony's College in Oxford. Welcome to my exp. For the Arab world, the experience of total defeat in 1967 was one of those seismic moments that forced a rethink on politics across the board. As always with plate tectonics, such movements take time. But one could really argue that between 1967 and 1979, the politics of Arab nationalism had been tremendously undermined by the failure of the Arab states to achieve the collective action required to resolve so many unfulfilled Arab goals: the liberation of Palestine, the development of modern institutions, modern industry, a place for the Arab world among the powers of the world that matched Arab aspirations. Instead, the Arab world in the 1970s looked more fragmented, more divided, and weaker. You had states that were coming under autocrats who would create the apparatus of repression that would suppress their own citizens, and the only movements that really had courage of conviction and pursued regular challenges to these autocratic states were those that were inspired not by an Arab national discourse, but by an Islamic one. Resistance politics by Muslim movements were very dangerous in the 1970s. The state had always practiced tremendous repression against the Muslim Brotherhood whenever the Muslim Brotherhood became politically strong. And so we saw it under the monarchy, when the Muslim Brotherhood was seriously repressed by King Farouk, and the first founder was ultimately assassinated. It is largely assumed with the state's consent. We saw it in Abdel Nasser and the Free Officers' Revolution in Egypt, when after having partnered with the Muslim Brotherhood, along with the communists, the Free Officers led by General Mohammed Naguib and Gamal Abdel Nasser, they abandoned the partnership with the Muslim Brotherhood when they saw them as attempting to exercise ideological control over the revolutionary movement in Egypt, and they threw a lot of them into jails where conditions only bred deeper antagonism to the state. Widespread torture, violation of human rights, engendered a belief among those who experienced Nasser's jail that the Egyptian state under its revolutionary regime was one in which believing Muslims could not practice their faith without compromise. It was, in a sense, an un-Islamic order, because it so violated the norms of human rights and of human decency that as Muslims they believed was their entitlement. Here we think back to the power of Ayatollah Khomeini, who from exile was calling on Iranians to mobilize around a common set of Islamic beliefs to overthrow what they saw as an un-Islamic, indeed godless government of the Shah of Iran and his forces. The idea that religiously inspired masses could mobilize in such power as to challenge the military might of the Shah of Iran, supplied by the United States with the latest state of technology and military materiel to be able to be a power not just in their own frontiers, but across the Persian Gulf region as a whole. The strongest military state, aside from Israel, in the Middle East. And with the penetration of a police state apparatus through the Savak, the feared secret police, whose reach across Iranian society was absolutely complete. And again, from personal experience, I remember visiting Tehran in 1978, where there was an absolute paranoia about what one said, not knowing who among the crowd around you was actually reporting to the Savak. So widespread was the reach of this police state. To think that by 1979, such a strongly authoritarian government could be overthrown by an exiled Ayatollah based in Paris and by his very, very strong support base, whose members were willing to sacrifice their lives in the pursuit of justice against an unjust ruler. And they succeeded. The moment the Americans overthrew the Ba'athist regime and took Iraq towards elections, the plurality of Shia Muslims was going to come to dominate the Iraqis at the ballot box. Moreover, American measures imposed after the invasion of Iraq in 2003, the overthrow of Saddam Hussein's government, through de-Baathification, in other words, rooting out all Iraqis associated with the Ba'ath Party in government and in the military. They disenfranchised the Sunni ruling elite that had been in power under Saddam, who now had no interest in the emerging Iraqi state post-Saddam. Indeed, they watched as Iraq was transformed from a presumed Sunni Arab state into a Shiite-dominated polity very close to their old enemy Iran. George W. Bush, without intending, had just expanded the area of Iran's influence, and Iraq was now seen as a country whose place in the Arab world had been transformed forevermore. The neighboring Arab states around Iraq began to talk about a Shiite crescent of Iranian influence extending through Iran to its long-standing ally Syria, and through Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon, and that Iranian influence now, in a sense, went right to the heart of the Arab Middle East and divided it in two.